It is official, like a referee with a whistle. Um,
Whoop,
I
whoop.
am, I am so grateful. So today on Conversations with Dr. West, I'm honored to welcome Katherine. How do I say your last name? Chidiac?
Chidiac. Yeah,
Chidiac.
Chidiac.
I'm
Yeah,
so, I'm so bad at pronunciation
me
with
too.
certain stuff. Okay. Well, Katherine is on with me, and Katherine is a mentor, a speaker, creative, and the founder of Plan B, Love Plan, a movement and relational approach dedicated to bringing love, understanding, emotional responsibility into the lives of young people in crises. Based in London, she works directly with youth in schools and institutions, offering a deeply human approach that challenges fear based systems of mental health, education, and behavioral intervention. Drawing from decades of lived experience, inner work, the three principles, and psychosynthesis, a transpersonal approach to psychology and human development, Katherine has developed a heart centered philosophy rooted in presence, connection, and seeing beyond pathology and labels. Her work asks profound questions about what young people truly need beneath symptoms, behaviors, and diagnoses. She's also the author of the book Now is New, and her larger mission is helping people understand the nature of the mind, suffering, healing, and what it means to live with greater awareness, authenticity, and love. In this conversation, we're going to explore conscious parenting, relational healing, fear versus love, emotional maturity, the over pathologizing of suffering, and the future of youth work and mental health in an increasingly disconnected world. Katherine, I'm grateful to have you on. Welcome to Conversations with Dr. West.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here, Wes. This is going to be fun.
Yes. So we were just talking, you're out in London,
Hmm.
and I was having this was sharing I had gone out to London and done some work training with Nora Bateson. But I also went, I didn't tell you this, but when I was out in London, there was a small organic group called Nomadic Youth that I had connected with on social media, and this really amazing guide. So I was back home, in Atlanta, Georgia, running this Eternal Strength Youth Center, and I thought we were pretty rogue in what we were doing. But once I met this dude that ran Nomadic Youth, it was like fully youth led. He was like, yeah, yeah, a bunch of the youth have keys to the place and they come and go and they
Oh,
said, and I was like, well, we haven't given keys to any of the kids who were working. I was like, we're still
I
kind of
love
operating.
that.
Yeah. But London for me, it was fascinating to kind of be out there and just, I loved it in so many ways. But what I would love to hear from you, Katherine, is maybe just kind of dive in and tell us a little bit about your journey and what brought you into this relational focused, emotional focused work that you are doing with youth, which is beautiful.
Oh, that's a great question and a big question. I'm kind of thinking, okay, where do I start? I think I'll start at the beginning. And I'll kind of say, look, I was, as a teenager, I struggled. I had like a very good time as well. I'm going to just put in there at times. Um, but there was a certain point where, what I was doing just wasn't working. Going out all the time. I was out from very young, um, being out, partying, what we call clubbing in London, um, raving. There was some drugs, alcohol, but also I think for me it was a time when I don't think I had a real sense of myself at all, is what I'm going to say looking back. And I developed I developed some health things alongside actually, and I ended up taking quite a lot of antibiotics. And through that, I think I developed uh, a sort of gut problem from taking all these antibiotics. And so I basically randomly, a like friend of my boyfriend's parents had sort of said to me, "Oh, you've got this thing called Canada. You have to eat this certain diet." And back then, he said basically don't eat dairy, don't eat gluten. I didn't even know what these things were, but I knew it was true. Like, I had bad skin. I just felt bad. And so I went on this search, and this just sort of sums me up. Like, someone says something to me and I feel like it's true. And so I just go with it. And at the time, there was like one organic shop in the whole of London. This was well before gluten or dairy free was a thing. And so it was really hard. It was really expensive. And I had like a little Saturday job, or probably a few more days at that age. But, I didn't have much money, and I was trying to do this diet, and it basically led to an eating disorder. And it started with, I'm going to say, kind of anorexic tendencies. Even at the time in the 90s, it was very fashionable to just sort of be nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm like a curvy girl. So I was sort of already fighting this sort of wanting to kind of slightly disappear myself. I think not really be, a lot of girls I work with as well, I see this. It's quite hard to become a woman, from being this child that's sort of asexual to suddenly becoming this woman and all the things that go with that. And I did this anyway. I developed bulimia, and it was really through as well. Like, if I ate the wrong food, I wanted it out of my system. I felt like, oh, this is horrible. And so it was weight related. It was also health related, but it was clearly off track, and it got out of hand, I'd say, quite quickly, where I didn't want to eat. I'd be out, drinking, maybe some drugs, not so much. As I was saying to you, my older brother kind of took that torch. And I saw it didn't look like it was working out that well for him, bless him. Like, so I kind of went in, and I see eating disorders very much as a kind of, you kind of turn in on yourself. Like, it's all my fault. There's something wrong with me. Why can't I be X, Y, Z, right? And so I got into what was like a really difficult place. And again, very strangely, someone very close to me had gone into recovery for an eating disorder and was telling me about it. And of course, I went, great, I'll do that. What's that? Like, I know this is crazy. Like, I'm throwing up my food. It's like a crazy thing to do. But so it was so normal as well. On one level, it's crazy, and on the other level, this is not normal. And so I started 12-step. I got very into the 12-step program, which was amazing and brought me to, I'm going to say, spirituality. It gave me a lot of gifts. But the food 12-step programs, I was sort of trying to weigh and measure my food. I got into a very cool food addict. I got into a very, what would I say, strong 12-step program. So I was, I had the up and ring, and it was, it was quite rigid. And alongside this, I was doing lots of spiritual stuff, exploring, just following my nose, just going here, there. And this was, again, before YouTube, sadly, or I would have been on that all the time. You actually had to buy a book, or buy a CD set or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, it.
Yeah.
There just wasn't, this stuff wasn't around as much. So I was exploring. I was really exploring. And in that time, I'd gone to my GP years before, and I finally got offered this time with a counsellor who I went to see for a few sessions, and then got referred to see a psychotherapist in this centre called the Tavistock Centre in London. And finally, years later, after I was doing all this recovery stuff myself, I got this appointment. I was really excited because I was like, there's some sort of validation as well. Like, yes, there's something wrong with me and I need help. Like, and I went to see this psychologist, psychotherapist. I actually don't know what they were exactly, but it felt important. And I went to this session, and for whatever reason, when I walked in the room, it was with this guy, and he wouldn't even look me in the eye. And I remember sort of talking to him, feeling like I was a bit mad, like I couldn't really connect. And at the end, he sort of said to me, I feel that it was a 40-minute session maybe. And I just sort of waffled on about my problems, I suppose. But at the end, he said, I think you're projecting your mother onto me, or something like that. And I remember going into the bathroom afterwards and looking in the mirror. When you look yourself in your own eyeballs, like that kind of, like, really looked into my eyes. And I was just like, you are mad, but that, I think, was more mad than you. Like this, and I didn't go back. I knew this is not where I wanted to heal. This wasn't, I'd done enough, I suppose, of other stuff that I felt like this is not for me. Like I don't see healing here. And so, sort of cut a long story short, I was absolutely, like, it was my life, recovering, spirituality, getting well, reading all the books, the kind of, back then, what was it, Byron Katie's Pema Chodron. I loved Pema Chodron. I don't know if, anyway, anyone knows, they know. When things fall apart, and the wisdom of no escape, and these amazing. And I remember telling my, there was this, like, on this journey, I was meeting people of all ages and stages. And I remember sitting with this really old guy called Peter, and we just did a little cafe near my house. And I said to him, that's it. I just give up in London. I'm going to go. I want to become a nun like Pema Chodron. I'm going to move. I think it's Gampo Valley. I'm going to go there and become a nun. And he just said to me, Kat, you are not a human having a spiritual experience. You're a spiritual being having a human experience. And it's like I knew it, but I didn't know it until that moment. Like, I was like, so at that point, I was still weighing and measuring food on this program. And I remember it was a really pivotal moment for me, because I remember just coming home. Oh, and to skip a bit of the story, well, quite a big bit of the story.
Yeah.
I at a certain point as well, I'd kind of just given up. There was a point, and I've written about it in my book, where I was living in a little, sort of studio flat in Camden in London, and I was working as a designer. I trained as a graphic designer, and I was working as a designer but freelance. And I remember just not being able to hold it together at all. And I was on the tube, and I couldn't, like, people looking at me felt it was. I would probably describe it as a psychotic break. Actually, I felt like I was just had no skin. I was like blood and guts, and you could just see my muscle. Like, it was. I just felt so raw. It was so painful. I just couldn't even look people in the eyes. It was like it was that kind of so overwhelming, and I didn't tell a soul. And again, I look back on the wisdom of that. Like, I don't know what would have happened if I told someone at that point. They might have sort of carted me off somewhere and never to be heard from again. I don't know. But I remember, I decided to just stop working, and I had to go and do this thing in England they call signing on, which means you're not working and you're going to get some money from the state to help pay some of your bills. So I was kind of on my knees, like really, really in a bad way. And she said to me, I'm going to put you in this homeless project. And I was like, no, I'm fine. I don't I'll be fine. I'll be fine. And I kept crying. I couldn't stop crying. It was just like, okay, will you just go and see it? I was like, okay, I'll go and see it. I went to see this place, and I realized, like, it was deep, Wes, because I realized, like, the world flowed in and looked after me in the most beautiful way. Like, it was like, this room was perfect. It was in this house near Finsbury Park in London, and I was in this, there was this little attic room, and it had this tiny little balcony outside the door, and I was just like, yes, I need to be here. And I went and lived there for a bit. So this is when I was living there in this, so things had kind of fallen apart for me, I'm going to say,
Yeah.
like, really. And so I was talking to this guy, and he said this thing, and I'd gone back to that house. And I remember buying Cocoa Pops on the way home, which was like a total rebellion to everything I've been doing with this food program. And like eating these Cocoa Pops and just being like, well, and now what do I do? This has been my whole life, to recover and to seek and to try and be well, like, but if I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, like, I just need to be human. Like, I can't, I don't need to try and be spiritual. It was such an epiphany for me in the
Yeah.
most like low level way of just, I'll just eat Cocoa Pops then. I don't know what to do now.
Yeah.
And so that really, that changed my life. And from that point, I actually started to just, and again, you can only see these things sometimes with hindsight as clearly as I'm saying it now. At the time, it didn't feel as clear as that. But I then, I got a job. I got another little job in a yoga studio. I got a job in a beauty salon, just on the desk, and then I started a business with a friend doing design. And so I was working really hard and I was paying rent in this homeless hostel. And they were like, I literally didn't know how to pay my rent. They were like, no one's ever paid rent here. We don't even know how to do it. It's like, well, I'm earning money. So I got out of there actually, probably it took me about a year and a half I was there. And I just genuinely look back on that and I just think, wow, the world just stepped in and looked after me, in the most beautiful, I let go and well, it just,
Yeah.
it came right for me. So then I did really just become a human and I was working, I started a business. It was quite a successful design business. I met what would be my future husband, now my ex-husband, but we still kind of love each other, like family. But, and we had our first son. I was quite young when I had my first son, like 26, young, but, and I just went full on being human. I studied psychosynthesis for quite a while, and then I felt very clearly I'm not ready to help anyone else at that age. I wasn't there. I was like, I didn't feel like it had fully worked for me yet. I just thought and I've carried on seeing a therapist for about 10 years, amazing woman. And I don't, you might relate to this, where it's just someone that you can talk to on a level,
Absolutely.
Yeah, who could hold that kind of spiritual, zoomed out perspective for me, but also I could talk about the kids and work. And, it was just a space where I could just stay connected to something. And I really did no other seeking after that. I went really hard and then I just sort of went, oh, I'll just be a human. And I really did that. So 4 kids later, I'm in my late 30s and I came across this thing called 3 principles. And that is really where I was not really that open to going to stuff even anymore. I was like, yeah. But I went to this talk and there was this guy talking and he was just like, it was different. It was like, he wasn't trying to tell you what to do. He was like, someone in the back of the audience actually got really annoyed with him, said, I came here, you said it was a talk about stress and you haven't told me what to do with my stress. And I was just like, oh, what's going to say to that? The way he answered it, I was like, oh, I like this. What is this? Because he said, oh, you want me to tell you what to do about your stress? Like, what do you mean? Like turn off your phone or have a nap or, and the guy was like, well, yeah. And he was like, oh, you see, well, what I do is help people know that they know what to do for their own stress. And I was just like, oh, what is this? I love it. Someone not telling me what to do, I'm in. So, and that was really a start. I got quite involved with an organization called Innate Health. And what I saw was like, this is helpful. This is really helpful to a person to know this, that, this, I'm going to very, very briefly summarize, this sort of understanding the mind, how the mind works for you. This beautiful gift of thought that we have, it's quite like maligned at the moment. You can think, but actually, what should we eat tonight? Chicken. It's constantly working for you, and it was just beautiful. And very quickly, I got involved with this Innate Health, and we thought we've got to teach this to kids. And with my background in design, I helped design the curriculum. I started teaching it in schools. It was great for quite a few years. And then I suppose I felt a bit like there was this very strict curriculum and I was got a bit disillusioned, like, hold on, And it was actually Wes when I started work. So I'm waffling on. Are you all right with this?
No, this is
I haven't told this story in
this is
ages.
perfect. No, this is perfect, and I have so many things that but keep going, please.
Okay, sorry. You just come shut me up if you need me
No,
to.
no,
Um, so I became a little bit disillusioned with it because I felt like something like the magic. It was, and it was really, you'll love this. I went to teach this curriculum in a PRU, and a PRU is a pupil referral unit. It's where they send the kids who can't be in school. And I was there like, don't you want well-being and health and, innate health? And they were like, no, fuck off. Sorry, should I swear? Can I swear? Sorry.
yeah.
But they did
Please,
actually say that.
absolutely, yep, totally good. But that's youth for you right there. You're like, you want holistic abundance and growth and healing, and they're like, not fucking really. Who gives a shit? And you're like, whoa.
I know. So I had this curriculum and I drove home after one session and just sort of feeling like, and it just, again, like a little epiphany, a little light bulb moment of, well, what do they want? What do they want? I mean, that'd be good to know. So the next week I came back, I was like, well, hey guys, what do you want? Like, let's have it like, if, shimmy your shoulders, let's think, like, what would you love? And it was like one of them said like a Mercedes G-Wagon with three girlfriends. I was like, three girlfriends. Sounds like a headache to me, but it was just beautiful. And we worked with that. We worked with like, why should you not have what you want? Like that's part of health, having desires, preferences, and we have our own unique ones, right? Like you clearly love tattoos. My partner just can't have one, like, no. And it's like we all have our own preferences, like what we like, what lights us up, what's creative for us, what we enjoy. You like the painting, I don't. I like that preacher, right. You hate him. It's like we like what we like. And so from that exact moment was born, what is it that I've seen that I would like to share? And then I kind of went away and wrote Now Is New, the pandemic hit. I was still teaching sometimes in school, the curriculum, but this new kind of, there was something else being born. And so that really takes me up to, I've been on a bit of a journey with it. And, big part of the journey was then going in to do one-to-ones with an amazing organization called Grow, who've really let me explore. I suppose what I'm interested in is what works, what's true, and it's not easy to get to that. It's pretty brutal, actually. One's got to be prepared to sort of fall flat on your face.
Yeah.
Quite a few times to
get there. I want to, well, first off, brilliant synopsis. I mean it. I'm serious because it's like, look, you could have done this, very kind of robotic, like, okay, I did this and I went through this, but how you walked us through your journey shows your heart and your relational approach to everything that you do. And I'm just honored because I listen to a lot of Eckhart Tolle. At this point, all my clients and everybody are like, well, you get it, Wes. Yep, you like Eckhart Tolle. And I'm like, he's so great, man. But he always, I just love when he talks about pain and suffering and breakdown is the most transformative portal of growth that you could ever experience. And so I was visualizing and I was there with you as you were on this journey. You talked about so many beautiful things where it's like, as a child, you come into this world and there's no blueprint. There's no, there's very much a behavioral conditioning of like, okay, go through this, go to school, get a job, make money and work in capitalistic society and engage, but there's no spiritual dimension or training that's kind of showing you that one wisdom nugget that you got from sitting with that older gentleman and him going, let me flip this all on its head. You are not a human having a spiritual experience. You are a spirit and a soul going through a human journey. But when you talk about your own struggles, and I've told you, you know, Catherine, and everybody that listens knows kind of my journey where addiction, substance use, mental health challenges, anxiety, depression, suicidality, but so much of it, I think, is surrounded around ego and
Mm.
identity development. And it's
Yes.
that constant existential question of like, who am I when you're a
Yeah.
youth and you're trying to find worth? And
Yeah.
our culture is constantly defining it as how do you look?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah.
Are you worthy because of those things instead of an inherent spiritual worth and loving yourself? And
Yeah.
but what took you
Your
to that?
uniqueness, like,
Yes.
where are we the
Yeah.
same and where are we unique? It's so beautiful. Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
I just, you know, your journey of it makes me think of several things. There's a quote from Joseph Campbell that says, "The treasure you seek lies in the cave you fear to enter the most."
Oh,
And you,
yeah.
but you went into the cave. And then the other thing that is really prominent for me is somewhere as a thread throughout your entire life, no matter what you were dealing with or going through, or whatever misalignment and challenges you were kind of walking through, you had an internal intuitive voice that was guiding you and speaking to you. And it was showing you, whether we want to
Yeah.
call that spirit or the divine, but it was that intuitive alignment. Like when you went and saw Homeboy that said, after you talked for 40 minutes, he's like, I believe you're projecting your mother on me. Like, and you went, I'm so grateful that you went to that mirror and you had that voice go, get the hell out of here. The healing is not happening here.
No.
Because I think a lot of people would have gone,
Mm.
well, that's the expert and they got the
Yeah.
credentials and they know. And it's like to have that compass, that internal compass that you have that's going, you know, I'm hungry for growth and change, but it's really important for me to pay attention to what's actually like healing
Yeah.
and helping and what may be misaligned. And I think that's what we're all kind of looking for. But your bravery and your courageousness to go, I got to find it. And it's coming from that rawness. And that's the same
Mm.
thing that's happened in my life. It's like, you know, I like again how Eckhart Tolle says it. He goes, you know, if you look at life like a dream, he says, if it's a really nice dream, you don't want to wake up.
Oh,
You,
great.
you you know what I mean? You're like everything's chill. I don't you don't try and wake up. But if it becomes nightmarish
Yeah. Too much. Yeah.
and you do not like, then you will do anything to
Yeah.
figure out a way to wake up. And I think it's that waking up, that consciousness expansion that gets you to those bigger questions of like, what am I doing? Do I have joy in my life? What am I pursuing? And what do I want to do with my time and energy? But then the Cocoa Puffs moment. The Cocoa Puffs moment is so cool to me because our culture loves to take things and turn it into 7 simple steps and self-help and self-care as if there's this ladder that you can climb of spiritual
It's like,
growth and then you
you'll be
arrive.
fine.
Yeah. And then you just kind of like float and you've done, and you see people, I see people who neurotically become fixated on self-development and
Yeah.
self-help,
Yeah.
and they lose the human being. They're just a human doing in another
Yeah.
aspect. And so I get this visual of you eating those Cocoa Puffs and being like, I'm just going to be. I'm
I
not
think.
going to, yeah. And then the doing shows up, you know, like you'll
Yeah.
do stuff. But if you
Yeah.
lose that being aspect,
It was.
you
It was
become,
actually effortless to do stuff after that.
yes,
Like it's like, oh, and then I sort of just got a job there, and then I got a job there, and just one little step. I was kind of out of what I love how you've met that. It's just so beautiful. Exactly that. Like, and this is what you see when you have been there, I suppose. Like you've been through, it was an identity crisis, like an annihilation. Some people have called it a psychotic break, whatever you want to call it. It's scary. It's super scary. But you know, what I see, whereas in we're living in a society that is terrified of that, prevents it, medicalizes it, um, will do anything just not to go there. And, you know, the work that I'm passionate about doing is, no, what's happening? Tell me. This is, you're being called. You know, it's more of a kind of, hey, I'm with you. I don't know where we're going. I'm here. I'm here for it.
Yes.
You know, because their journey is not going to be my journey. And I don't know. I don't know in my head what needs to happen for them. I genuinely don't. I'm not reading a textbook and going, oh, this is the 5-point plan, like you said.
Right.
It's not like that. It's just, I trust when we're called with pain, there's a reason and there's wisdom in it. Like there's gold.
Yes.
Like we're going to heal when we can attend, you know?
When we can attend, when we can, and in the words of Dr. Gabor Mate, it's only when you can be with your pain and look at your pain, and that, you know, the running from pain that we're so conditioned and indoctrinated to do. Pain shows up, we don't. There's a beautiful little, I can't remember where I heard it, but I tell it a lot of times, and it's a little story, a fable of this guy, and he's sitting in a cave and he's trying to meditate, and here come these 3 ghosts, and they're haunting him, and they're like, you know, flying around his cave, and the ghosts, you know, kind of symbolically represent fear, anxiety, insecurity, whatever it may be. And at first, you know, he's trying to still his mind and meditate and find peace, and he starts to get frustrated, so he asks them politely, will you please exit my cave, will you please leave, give me peace. And they don't listen. They just keep flowing and, you know, haunting him. And so then he starts to get really irritated, and the anger builds, and he starts to raise his voice and scream. And he's like, get the hell out of here. I told you to leave me alone. He flips his, you know, little meditation chair and table, and he's dysregulated, and they still are just floating and hanging out. And he's like, damn it. So then he breaks down, full on, falls to his knees, tears, begging, pleading, please, for the love of God, just leave, just give me peace, leave. And still, here they are, just floating and haunting, floating. And then finally, he breaks down and goes, you know, come on in. You want to have some tea? And they come in and they have some tea, and then they take off.
Yes.
And that's what I think about, is when the pain shows up in your life, when the suffering shows up in your life, to your point, if you can attend to it, you don't have to wallow in it. You don't have to, you know, it's going to, but it is carving a space within you to bring in light and to bring in healing.
Absolutely. It's like, there's tears, cry them. If there's anger, speak it. I mean, not at someone, but, you know, let yourself express and listen. That's the gold. What it brings you, that, you know, I work with a lot of kids who are angry. People don't want to know, and they're usually medicated. And what's underneath that anger is so true. And it's just no one's can listen, you know? And I literally weep so often. And, you know, like we laugh. Like sometimes I'm crying their tears, but often it's just tears of connection and understanding, and like, listen to the gold of this. Like,
Yeah.
it just blows my mind every time, because what they're saying is just so fair enough.
Yep.
And it's just being with that. That's
Just
it.
and like you said, sitting in the fire with somebody, and not, you know, and all the beautiful kind of practitioners, whether it's Dr. Shafali, Brene Brown, these people talk about, it's not about having the right answer. It's not about saying the perfect thing. It's about being able to sit with another in their pain and not run from it, and say, I have been to this place in my own life too, but I cannot give you a specific way to exit it. Kind of like you said in the talk, when you heard the guy talking about stress, and somebody's like, give me the exit plan. How do I get rid of this? What's the execution? You know, all that, and going, look, I can't give you that. And if I did, I would be disempowering you. But what I can do is offer you an opportunity to go into it, understand it deeper, and find out that somewhere within you already know.
Well,
You hold it.
this is it. This is, I think, the game changer. Is so, so always, if I can, I've got a kind of process, and it's come very organically, and it starts with like preferences, just like Xbox or PlayStation, Netflix or YouTube, Instagram or Snap. Like, it's very fun. But then I did this for a bit of fun and just to show, look, we're all unique. But then I realized that this is the whole thing. Like, this, we're designed not just to survive, but to thrive, to just get what we want. Whether that's, the example I always use is, do you want boiled chicken tonight for dinner? Wes? No one wants boiled chicken. We want peri peri, southern fried, like tandoori. I don't know. We want flavored chicken. We want something we like. And, for me, especially working where I work, and even I work with kids in some really bad situations. But let me tell you, they are not trying to survive on that chicken level. They have got chicken tonight. Like, it's are you going to go out tonight and try and find a chicken to kill it? I'm sorry if someone's vegetarian. I do sometimes use rice as an example too. Like, are you going to go pick the rice? No, we're not. Like, we're not in this country. We are going to go and buy it. And so we're not in the game really of surviving, although I know it feels like it. We're in the game of thriving. We're getting what we want. So we want to get clear on what that can be. And the other thing I do is I do this thing which is grounding, and we build this big heart, and I ask them all the things that they love. And, sometimes some people need a lot more coaching on that to kind of find, who the people, what are the things, what kind of foods, all of that. And we build their sun or their moon. A lot of girls like building moons. It's a thing I've recently discovered.
Cool.
But it's their light. And in that light is, I say, take me. We're sitting with mum. We're chatting on the bed. How do you feel? Safe, secure, connected, loved, joy. How do you feel when you eat that chicken? Excited, nourished. And so we help them find, like, I suggest words sometimes to help them with that emotional language, but they're their words. Like, they have to choose the words. Like, they are not mine. I've got my own preferences and my own words.
Yeah.
And I build this light. And so then it's very much, right, this is who we are, this capacity to feel these beautiful feelings, present, peaceful, free. How do you feel when you're running down the soccer field? Like, free, strong, all these beautiful, we have the capacity to feel all of that. And we do. I've worked with some people in some really dark places, and you know what? They still have that. They still have that sun. However diminished it might be, they still have it. And so from there, it's then, this is who you are. That's your light. This is your spirit. We don't do it. We're born with it. This capacity to create these beautiful feelings, feel them. What gets in the way for you? And again, that's unique. That's their own version of that. We have our own flavors of what gets in the way.
Yeah. Katherine, it's so, wow. I mean, it's so powerful, and we were talking earlier about academia and quote unquote experts in the field, whether they hold PsyDs or PhDs or advanced research, and how psychobabble and particular, theoretical terminologies and abstract thought, but just, what I always
just think nope.
Yeah. Well, it's that intuitive piece that's like, I think this might be not it.
I have to kind of translate it into like, are you trying to say this? And it's quite simple.
But what you made me
operate
think,
like this,
with the light and your technique with working with youth of let's really visualize and do this inner journey work with the sun and the moon, and how do you get there? So somebody whose work I love, Carl Jung, who's stood the test of time as a transpersonal, cultural, spiritual. He wove in so much, but he says, And here was all of his study of the human psyche and the unconscious. And one of his quotes is, as far as I can tell, the entire journey of life is about sparking and kindling and growing light where there is darkness. And it's like
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful.
there's somebody who's, done all the study and done all the and looked at it from every lens you can, and still
Yeah.
stepped back and went, it's about the light. And when you really think
Yeah.
about that metaphor, if you have somebody that is in a room that is pitch black and they cannot see and it is full of darkness, but one tiny beam of light shows up in that darkness, it still opens. It opens this crack and this potentiality. And if you can go to it and kind of put the focus on the light, next thing you know, it can eradicate the darkness and it can show up and just grow. And I like to look at it as an internal flame. And it's like every
Yes.
single one of us, I don't care who you are and what you've
Yeah.
been through, has that internal flame. Now, some people, it is literally so saturated. Maybe it's been raining and there's not a lot of firewood, but there's this teeny kindling that if you go, just like on those survival shows when they're starting
Yeah.
fire,
Yeah.
and then finally get it and it goes, it's like then you just got to tend to the flame, like, and just keep growing it. And we all have that.
Well, that's it. The darker the room, if you let the light in, it's sort of brighter, right? Like, I, so there's such beautiful analogies, because that's really, like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm not learning this from a manual or a textbook. It's like, it's just like I'm feeling my way through. Like, but there's the thing that I started out with was exactly that. Like, what's health? We're so focused on, we call it mental health, but it's not health. We're focusing on ill health. So what's health? And, you know, for me, there is a spiritual element to it. And I work with a lot of religious kids, but, to keep it real simple, I do not beat my heart, heal my cuts. I do not breathe myself. I do not grow my babies. I don't know when to grow eyeballs and kneecaps and lung. I don't know any of that. There's like an intelligence. And what I always try and show them is, and the mind works the same way, beautifully, perfectly, designed resiliently to get over hurt, actually. We're designed perfectly in exactly the way, like, what shall I eat tonight? Chicken. It's always working for us.
Yes.
It's just, I feel like we've misunderstood it. And we've overlooked its genius,
Absolutely. It's, and you bring up, I've worked with so many youth too, that like religion and anything that talks about God or spirit, they may have been through a lot of challenging situations where it has a bad taste in their mouth, and they're like, I don't want to even, and then I work with a lot of science kids who are very much like, empirical reductionism, and they're like, unless you can show me God in the room, I do not believe. But I like to say there's this David Bowie quote, and I think it was David Bowie who said it, but he said, religion is for those who fear hell. Spirituality is for those who have lived it.
Oh, I like that.
I know. And I think, but what you talk about is so important because it's helping people understand spirit. And that's not this, particular
Not
culture
religious.
or right. And it's not, but it is divine spirit and creative life force that is breathing and immanent and existing all the time. And it's what we're a part of. I like to say all the time when I'm working with clients, I'm like, look out the window. If the trees and the bees went away right now, all of us are dead. You're not the one doing everything, you know what I mean? But we'll make ourselves think I'm the one holding all this together. And like you said, my heart beating, breathing, all of these autonomic functions, and then beginning to look at the connection and the tapestry that we're woven into in the ecology and in the stars and in the infinite. It's like we're all part of it.
That's it. And that's what
Absolutely.
I'd say. While that spark of light, like I call it the spark of life, this the light, while that's there, and when it's gone, it's gone. I don't know where it goes,
Yeah.
beyond my pay grade. But I know while it's here, we have access to all these genius capabilities, creativity, you know, how shall I get home tonight? I think I'll take the bus. I'll go, like just constantly creating and creating our experience, taking in the information, seeing the light, working out which way to go. It's like, it's just genius working for us all
Yeah.
day, every day. And we just totally overlook it.
Yeah.
And
Or our
that's
ego.
amazing to me. Yeah.
Our ego comes in the way and we think we need to control it and steer. But like you said, if you can let that steering wheel go from the grips of your own rigidity and thinking that you need to drive, and you can ask, you can actually commune with spirit and that internal light and voice and intuition. It's like a song,
Yeah.
and when you're vibing on a song that you like, nobody has to tell you, do you like this song? And you're not
Yeah.
picking apart the instruments and going, well, I don't know about the frequencies and the levels, or that you just vibe on the song and you're like, that's my song. I like that. That makes me feel
Yeah.
good. And when somebody puts on some music that you're like, I hate this shit. Like that's not my song. But you got to find
Totally.
that and just stay in alignment. Well,
Isn't
Katherine,
it so beautiful that
yeah,
you
oh
would
my
have a
gosh.
song, I would have a song. We all have our vibe. Like
Yes,
we're unique, but we're also completely the same. Same
there,
systems,
there it is.
unique expression. Like how beautiful. Like how, yeah.
And that I think you bring up a great point. I study a book called A Course in Miracles, and I've studied that for a long time. But it's kind of this trippy metaphysical undoing of the ego thought system to recognize that you are inherently connected to spirit. But it talks about the ego always looks for differences and focuses on that the most, and spirit recognizes the inherent connectivity but I love what you said, because if we are spirits having a human experience, we can't just get rid of the ego or get rid of
No.
our differences or our particularity, but we can begin to have awareness and consciousness
Right.
and go, okay, cool. This is my uniqueness, but also I'm, tethered and connected, and we're all the same. Every single human being is on this journey seeking freedom, connection, love, union, and anything that is not guided towards that is creating, suffering. But we're all seeking the same thing. And it's kind of recognizing that. And I do think that the world is starting to wake up in ways that it hasn't in a long time, with archaic systems kind of falling apart, and more and more connectivity and empathy and compassion, which is beautiful.
Well, this is it. And, like life can be so painful, and I don't think we get to love, so many people have spoken on it, but we don't get to love all our love unless we've felt pain, I think, unless we've gone there. We don't get to feel the freedom available unless we've really felt the shackles and understood. It's like there are these deeper feelings available to us. And so when I'm working with someone and they're in a lot of pain, I say, we don't go here for nothing. We go here for a deeper love, a deeper connection. And they know it's true. They're being called to a deeper expression. And you and me, Wes, we know, like, we're going to be called to that again and again in our own lives, to keep, through the eye of that, it's like birth. I feel like when you birth, you have to kind of let go and be prepared to die, and look what comes at the end. And to me, that is emotionally and mentally, I don't think you can know the light without the dark. Can you? I don't know. Maybe I'm talking rubbish, but it looks to
No,
me
I agree.
like we don't know the line without space, right? we are both. There's both. And I don't know anyone who's gone through life and just been fine. You know, just, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm just going to be good the whole way through. I mean, maybe there are. We need to hear from you if you're out there. What are you doing? But I feel like, you know, for most of us, we're called. And I think what I'm seeing and what I'm compelled to try and do something in a, like, I don't know how way, but just I am, is, you know, this sort of what's happening at the moment, it kind of actually breaks my heart, because what we're doing is really what we do anyway, which is medicate ourselves, whether that be with weed or excessive yoga and meditating. I don't know, whatever we decide is our medicine, alcohol, shopping, whatever it is, we find our medicine that helps us to feel better. And that's fine. I'm totally on board. Me too. But there's a way that we can medicate that prevents this natural process. You know, something that just almost works, could keep us there for our entire life, and we never actually really feel these beautiful feelings that are there to be felt. You know, we're just kind of holding on to, like, you know, we're not really experiencing the full human experience, you know? And it's because we're afraid of it. We're afraid of it. And I'm not surprised we're afraid of it, because there are guides. But on the whole, there is so much fear. I mean, I work in a system that's just so fearful, cannot meet, doesn't know how to meet anger, doesn't know how to meet, you know, from young, you know, it's wrong, it's made wrong, we can't be with it. We don't know how to be with it.
And that's it, Katherine. And I think, man, you make me think of so much. I think the work that you've done in your own growth work and is now mirrored and showing up when the work you're doing with youth is absolutely beautiful. Because I think about Ram Dass, and he talks about, I work on myself to help others, and I help others to work on myself. But it's really the work on yourself that kind of creates the invitation for others. But I was going to say,
and great guides that have just showed up.
Yeah.
You know, at different times. Yeah.
Yeah. And at one point, you know, I had this moment with my own journey where I was running this center, which I loved, and Eternal Strength. And I was working with so many youth, and we had all these different spaces. We had like a music space, a ceramics room, a skate ramp out back. But I had gotten to a place where I wasn't doing any of my creative work. And so at one point I was like, you know, I'd always played guitar. And I was like, I want to go and really, but it came from pain. Again, it came from sitting with pain, and I didn't want to run from it. And so I started to sit down and make some music. And one of the things that I love about the process is I will let go. Something will flow through, and it feels like I'm channeling some either from my unconscious or from spirit. And then I'll write some lyrics and then look back at it and be like, oh my God, like I won't understand what it meant. So I wrote this one song, and I worked with this incredible artist, reached out to one of my favorite artists, this independent artist, Dustin Luke, and we did some work together. I put out this little EP, but I wrote a song called Holy Grace. And in the lyric of the chorus, I wrote, and I didn't even know I was doing it at the time, but Dustin brings it up a lot. He's like, dude, I love that lyric that you wrote. And I wrote, darkness carves a space in you, divine with holy grace. And he said, I love, for him, he was like, it makes me think about how the darkness and the pain and the suffering and the sorrow is actually carving this space in you that is letting light in and is actually divine and divine with holy grace. And so I think about that. And then, have you ever read Khalil Gibran?
Yeah.
Okay. If I may just take a minute, but I pulled it up while you were talking, because you are speaking truth. And for anybody that doesn't know, Khalil Gibran, Lebanese poet, he wrote a book called The Prophet, which my wife actually gave me when we first started dating. She was
Oh,
so much
I
smarter than
love
me. Well, when she was
her. You
way
married
ahead of
her.
me. Yeah.
I need
She
to
was
marry
like,
you.
she was like, I got this book. It's been really powerful.
Oh, I
And
love
she
it.
gave it to me. But he writes a poem called On Joy and Sorrow. And it
Mm.
reads, he says, your joy is your sorrow unmasked. And the self same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is not the cup that holds the wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? And is not the lute that soothes your spirit the very wood that was hollowed with knives? When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Some of you
Which
say
has been
joy,
your delight.
yeah, he says, some of you say joy is greater than sorrow, and others say, nay, sorrow is the greater. But I say unto you, they are inseparable. Together they come, and when one sits alone at your board, remember the other is asleep upon your bed. And like, but we don't want to hear that. We've been raised in this Coca-Cola, McDonald's,
Mm.
like you need to pursue joy and avoid pain at all costs. And here comes all these ways to mask and avoid and not sit with your pain. Shopping, food, sex, gambling,
YouTube
technology,
videos, self-help.
YouTube. Yes, all like just, and
Oh,
it's just a way of people going, I'm feeling some pain. There's got to be a way to avoid this and get away from it. And like you said, the answer lies in your pain is showing up for a reason. There's some beauty behind it if you can go to it and sit with it.
that's it. Like if you're often say to them, and this, my mentor told me this. I remember once saying, like, I've got all this sadness and I can't cry it. Like I can't. And he said, he's like this northern guy, and he just went, I do, Kat. I go to my CD collection and I find the song. I'm like, oh, the song. Yeah. He's like, the song, yeah, that'll help me cry. And I just find that and I just play that. And sometimes it's just a song and sometimes it's a couple of hours. I just thought, like, yeah. I mean, how simple is that? Just feel it. Just cry. Like, nothing bad's going to happen if you cry.
Right.
It's
Feel
like,
the
are we ever going to stop? Is this me, my whole life falling apart? Oh no. Oh no.
Katherine.
You know?
I am so grateful. I mean it, like I knew when you reached out that I already knew we were
How did
gonna.
I see? How we know? We don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you
Kindred
being in
spirit.
London, and we've
Mm,
had these schedules, but we were able to
mm,
connect today.
mm, mm.
Um, let's do this. How can people find out about you and learn more about your work, if they want to?
If they want to go down that rabbit hole
Yeah.
with me. So the project is called Plan.be, B-E. And the website is www.loveplan.be. And I'm in startup. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm keeping the work in schools because, like you say, they are my best teachers. And I totally adore them, all of them. I just adore those kids. So, that's what I'm kind of up to. And I suppose I'm sort of hatching a book and I'm sort of, I'm developing this. I suppose it's a way to work, especially with young people, that works. Um, and I'm sort of in the process of just testing that constantly. And yeah, how can it, that didn't reach, that didn't connect, and you can see it. All these measures, and they're super helpful because they'll hopefully will help, give some credibility to the method. But really, you can see when the lights go on for a person again, like you know, I know when my work's done, you know, like
Yeah.
you can see it in their whole being is, you know, they are, and not always me too, you know, and I'm very careful to say it. I'm up against the same things you are. You know, we're human together. Like what gets in the way for me, same thing. I get those clouds get
Yeah.
in front of my sun, you know. The difference is, and this is what I just want to leave this on, is I know what they are now. I know it's temporary. I know it's going to have gold if I can listen, if it keeps showing up and I listen, there's gold. So that's it really.
That's
You know, I don't, you can't really follow me. I'm not really, I'm
well,
not.
but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put links in the description to
Yeah.
the website for anybody that wants to go visit
Yes.
that, for your book that you've written, and to just be able to stay in touch with your work. Because Katherine, I'm going to tell you, like, you know, in the U.S., I was always fascinated where I'd see out in the UK. This happened with music and with art, but I feel like it definitely was the field of what's called youth work. I saw the most progressive stuff happening either in the UK or in Australia. And it was starting to branch out where it wasn't this as medicalized, as much of a like therapist client, but it was that Rogerian and humanistic, like, no, we're doing youth work. And the term that I always used was radical youth work. And that came from two incredible researchers, Dr. Hans Scottmeyer and Dr. Kathy Scottmeyer, and they've written, but they called it mutual liberation, which is exactly what you talk about, where it's like, we're not different. We're human beings on the journey. Like you just said, the only difference is I've probably had some more years and I've started to bring awareness to when the pain and the sorrow and the suffering shows up. I know not to immediately try and run from it, but don't think that I didn't try and run from it for years. I just start to understand it at a deeper level and try and see what is this here to teach me.
And I absolutely still will try and run from it a bit, Wes. You know, like it's, you know, it's a challenge for us to be with it. I am not pretending it's so simple and it's not easy, you know, it's, but we are all up against the same thing and we are all ultimately called to the same places, really, I think. And, you know, I think a bit like you say, I want truth more than I'm scared, you know, is in the
Absolutely.
end.
I'm going to do my rock and roll hands for that.
Yes.
But it's so, and then, you know, what gives me some grace and patience on this journey is Ram Dass, who I adore, and I talk about him all the time, but he says at the end, we're all just walking each other home.
Yes. Yes.
And it is this beautiful, like, we show up. Yeah. And what I want to let people know that are listening to this is, Katherine, even though you may not have had extensive training in psychology and the psyche, you are doing on the front lines, you are doing radical youth work, Rogerian, Carl Rogers, humanistic, Rogerian, person-centered, direct care. And that is what our world needs. And that's what I'm watching show up, is these people like you who are following their light and their passion, are doing their own work along the way, and then going, I have to follow my highest excitement. I have to follow what feeds my soul, because anyone that's not doing that, you're doing an injustice to others and yourself. And it's hard to figure out a way to do that. But like you just said, it's got to be more than comfort, more than status quo. I want truth, I want authenticity, and I want realness. And I'm going to seek that.
And I'm going to say, you know, the kids we see in crisis, that's what they're in the game of too, you know.
Yeah.
And when you speak to their wisdom, you listen for the wisdom in their anger, you listen for the wisdom in their pain, it's gold. You know, they are onto it. Like, behaviors we might label as, you know, not acceptable. If you want to put them in a room and teach them maths and English all day, okay, maybe not. But when you hear their life, you hear what they're actually up against in their life, it's the wisest, most sensible way they could be behaving. You know, it's the most logical approach that they're taking. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
absolutely.
you're right. Like, it's so, it's sort of all on its head in some ways, you know? It's like, and that is what I see as my job, is to listen for the wisdom, just be present, listen for the wisdom, take, like, extract the gold, you know? That's it. It's not mine, it's theirs. You know, they have it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Katherine, you're
Oh,
amazing. Thank you
one
so
of my
much
new
for
favorite
coming on.
people, Dr. Wes.
Well, listen, and I'm going to have to make it to London at some point, or you're going to have to make
Yes,
it to the States. We'll figure out. But thank you again for coming on
100%.
Conversations with Dr. West.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me. You're amazing. Thank you.
Awesome.